this is the Fujifilm 16-55 f2.8, and I took it out for a shoot and I'll be sharing my thoughts about it. I was convinced for so long that you really needed a prime lens to take great images, and that with zooms you would be compromising on a lot of quality. It was like a trend that you needed to be shooting with a prime to be considered good. So for the last few years I've almost always had a prime lens attached to my cameras. To make it simple, prime lenses contain less moving parts and less optical elements, so there's less to interfere with the image quality. To be completely honest, this was something I wasn't as excited about to purchase, and let me tell you why. For the last year, since I've gotten into doing more video work, I've shot alongside many incredible photographers. And I noticed many of them just aren't using prime lenses anymore. Some of them didn't know much about prime lenses to begin with, and that's also where knowledge can be like a double-edged blade sometimes. Because on the other side, when you know too much, it can work against you. When you're starting out, it's very easy to get too technical about everything, and like me, you'll end up bringing way too many lenses along to a shoot, or having moments where you're having a hard time deciding on what you want to use, and then you're constantly changing back and forth. So I decided that this would be a great move for me going forward. I already use the Sigma 24-70 on the Sony a7 IV now, and I've been really happy with how a lot of my shoots are now turning out with this zoom lens. And I wanted to use the Fujifilm for more professional shoots now, and not get stuck on what focal length I want to use when I'm going out to shoots. My first impression of this lens is great, like all Fujifilm lenses, as they're always built really well. One thing that I was mindful of when getting this lens was that often people complain about the weight of it. This lens weighs about 650 grams, and I believe my 23mm f1.4 weighs about 230. But this really isn't an issue unless you have a camera body like the XE4, which doesn't have a grip. Personally, I like a little bit of weight, as when I'm doing video work, I often rig it up, and the added weight allows me to keep the camera a bit more stable. From a full frame point of view, it is a 24 to 82.5mm lens, which makes it very versatile. Going back to the point about why I purchased this lens to start with, I don't mean it in a way that because other people were using zoom lenses, now I want to use zoom lenses. It just made me realize that I was missing out on more by not using a zoom lens more often. And I also recommend to a lot of people when starting out not to get too focused on prime lenses, as this can get very confusing. You're better off starting with a zoom lens so you have that added versatility, and then you can figure out where your style lies. You may be someone that likes to shoot a lot of wide, so you might get like a 24mm prime, or you prefer to shoot a lot of zoomed in portraits, so whether you get like an 85mm, or you might really think about, I want a little bit extra, so you go to the 7200 or even like a 135 prime. It can get confusing very quickly, so that's why I really say that a 24-70 covers all your bases to begin with, and even for me, 24-70 is all I've been using for a lot of my video work, so that can take you really far. I'm not going to talk too much about the technical aspects of this lens, but I will say that it has weather resistance, so that's a huge bonus for me. This lens often gets described as a bag of primes, and after using it so far, I can see that. However, I do miss shooting at f1.4, and so when the day comes that we get a f1.4 zoom lens, that's going to be awesome. So far, I do have the Sigma Art 18-35 f1.8, and that has been my most favorite lens to use for all of my video work so far. Without getting too technical, I'll just say that this lens has a twin linear motor, and all you need to know is that this is good. It allows you to focus a lot quicker, and it's been really reliable for both photo and video. I really enjoyed using this lens, and I can really see myself using it more moving forward, despite being attached to the 23mm f1.4. The only thing that I'm not a huge fan about is the fact that it's an externally zooming lens. I just get a little bit paranoid despite the fact that it has weather resistance, that when I'm doing things like beach shoots, the sand can sort of just get its way into the gaps. I know everyone just says keep it clean, but when you're in the middle of a shoot and you're constantly zooming in and out, it's hard to keep track of this. My Sigma 24-70 was actually getting a little bit crunchy because I was doing a lot of beach shoots at one point, so some of the sand had gotten inside, and so whenever I would zoom in and out, you would hear that noise, and it was really irritating to hear. It can also be a downside if you're doing a lot of gimbal work, as you'll need to keep rebalancing for the different focal lengths. Personally, I use the DJI RS3 Pro, and that can handle the differences fairly easily. But I also wanted to get a RS3 Mini for smaller work, but if I was to zoom in and out with this lens, I would actually have to rebalance it. I think about, was this lens worth it? And the answer is yes. But it's not for everyone. If you're wanting a decent zoom for traveling and you're not too crazy about landscapes, the Fuji 18-55 is actually a very impressive lens. Although it has a variable aperture, I actually bought this lens first when I got into video work, and the autofocus and the sharpness is just amazing. You wouldn't think that it's a kit lens. It even has optical stabilization built in, unlike the 16 to 55. So for low light situations, it makes things a little bit easier to manage. Look at the difference between these two lenses. The size difference is massive, but the performance is still great out of this small lens. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. There's plenty more content coming to this channel, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.